yes, the king is in its original position here on e1. So that does help in some ways. The rook also is here, so they could eventually castle. The players shake hands and we are ready now. Let's see what Magnus plays as the first move. He pushes his pawn to c3, opening up the bishop on this long diagonal. Now Parham, is he going to respond back with a symmetrical c6, or is he going to play something else? He plays his pawn to e5, capturing the center. A fantastic move here. And now d4 seems like one option, but there's another very powerful move that Magnus has, and he plays it, f4. This is an excellent move by Magnus because it opens up the queen, it opens up the bishop, and you will see that Magnus always takes very good care of his bishops in freestyle chess. Now Parham takes f4. You can take it back with the queen. Yes, the queen is developed early in the opening. Maybe not good idea in standard chess, but in freestyle chess, it cannot be attacked so easily and looks like a fine move. But Magnus prefers to develop the knight, wants to take the pawn on f4 with his knight. And Parham now, thinking hard, goes pawn to c6. He opens up his bishop on b8. It's a good move by Parham Maghsoodloo. And now Magnus will simply take the pawn with his knight. He's writing down the score sheet here. And now he doesn't take the pawn. He long castles here. And with that long castle, he just simply moved his king from e1 to c1 because the rook was already on d1. Magnus taking some chances there, giving Parham the chance to save the pawn with g5, which will be met with h4 with a good position for white. Parham goes d5. He pushes his pawn forward and tries to capture some space in the center. Well, this move particularly isn't great because it doesn't help anyone in freestyle chess. The bishop gets blocked here. This bishop was anyway active. A much better move would have been just knight to d6. But after d5, knight came out to b3. So Magnus now looking with both his knights on good squares here. This pawn, of course, is hanging. Knight comes to d6. And Parham plays this move calmly, knight coming out. Magnus has to decide now what to do next. He takes the pawn on f4 with the queen. Wow, what a move there by Magnus Carlsen. Because yes, you can move the knight and give a discovered attack on the queen. But it doesn't really help. So that's the reason why Magnus took the pawn with his queen. And now Parham, thinking about the position, goes queen to e7. It would be a dream scenario for Parham if he could go f6, bishop e6, short castle. That could be a very nice development. And the bishop comes out to c5. He pins the knight here with the bishop. And Parham is thinking about what to do next. He plays his knight to b6. If Magnus can engineer a successful e4 pretty soon, that would be a huge problem for Parham Maghsoodloo. He brings his knight to d4, and what a powerful move this is. He's threatening knight to f5. If that isn't controlled, then the d6 knight is pinned because the bishop is standing there. So g6 seems like a very likely move. Yes, he pushes his pawn to g6 and the knight no longer can jump into the f5 square. And Magnus plays his knight to e5. The knights are now very well positioned, and you can see that there are all sorts of threats here. If you play f6, there's knight g6, at g6, bishop g6. On the other hand, there's knight c6, pawn c6, knight c6, creating a fork. Oh my goodness. It's just complete chaos. f6 played here by Parham. He's taking his chance here. He's really ready for Magnus's sacrifices. Magnus calculating, he has 51 minutes on the clock. Parham down to 26 minutes already. So knight takes on c6. And now if pawn takes c6, we will have knight takes c6 here. Parham takes the knight, of course. The position that will arise will be very complicated, but definitely to Magnus's advantage. He takes it. Knight takes c6. And Parham thinking here, he will move his queen away. Queen to c7. Just moving the queen away now. Knight takes rook is possible, but then it could be met with, well, you can't take here. This is bad because of queen f6. So maybe knight d8 is not such a bad move, but Magnus goes queen e3 check. Interesting move by Magnus, because knight e4 is possible. Although after bishop e4, d e4, well, the position remains complex here. But yeah, is knight e4 an easy move? Parham goes king d7. He's moving his king. He's getting it into the middle of the game. And now Magnus comes in. Let's down his move. And he takes the rook. Knight takes d8 on the board. And Parham chops it back. Queen takes d8. What's next for Magnus? He plays h4. This is such an amazing move. He sees his bishop is well placed. He sees his other bishop is well placed. The other option was to get the rook to the semi-open file, but he's deciding to just open up the position with h4, h5. Bishop comes out to e6. And now h5 played. So very strong move here. g5 played by Parham. Puts his pawn out on g5. And the f5 square is slightly weakened. He goes rook h f1. He's putting pressure on the f6 point. Of course, materially black is doing okay, but white's pieces are just so much better, so much superior. Parham goes knight c4. You can see Parham really starting to put some pressure on Magnus. He attacks the queen here. The queen has to move. Maybe queen f2 is the best choice. But he goes... Yes, he plays queen f2. And his idea now is to go e4, which would be a very strong move, opening up the position even further. Parham goes knight a4. Wow, what a move here by Parham Maghsoodloo. He's attacking the b2 pawn. If you play b3 here, then knight takes c5 is attacked. So, let's see what Magnus does now. Parham is not someone who's going to collapse so easily. Magnus plays his bishop to f5, a very, very tricky move. And the main point here is that if you take the pawn on b2, I have take, and queen f5 with a huge advantage with bishop coming here and putting pressure. So clearly taking on b2 is bad, but taking on c5 is really good, because after queen takes c5 there is queen b6, taking here king c7, and black wins as there's a mate and the queen is also hanging. That's a huge moment. Bishop f5. And Parham goes bishop f4. Wow, what a move there by him. Although knight takes bishop was the best one here, but bishop f4 is such a cool move. Because on one hand you are threatening to take the bishop, the other hand you are putting pressure on d2. It's a great move. It's a great move by Parham. Magnus now thinking really hard here what to do. The best move that Magnus has at his disposal now is g3, but instead he goes queen d4. And now the problem here for Parham is that queen takes d5 is hanging. Look at this, how the bishop is pinned. So basically, let's say if I take knight c5, this queen takes d5, knight d6 and take on c5. But this position is fine because of knight f5. That's the thing. So in a way, queen takes d5 would be a mistake if Parham takes knight c5, but it's so difficult to figure out that you must take the c5 bishop, because d5 pawn, losing it would be a huge blow. Parham plays king c6. Wow, what a move this is. Because if you take the bishop here, I'm going to take the knight on, going to take the bishop with my knight. A great fighting move here for Magnus. And now let's see what Magnus will try to do, because there are fighting moves like rook takes f4, bishop takes e6, and these are really important options. But Magnus thinking he takes bishop e6. He goes for that. And Magnus takes Parham takes knight c5, rook takes f4 played. An exchange sacrifice here in the position. If you play knight takes e6, there is rook takes f6, pinning the knight, and so you have to do something else. He takes the rook. And now black is a piece up. But Magnus has a few pawns. He takes another one. Queen takes d5. Notice the time on the clock. Parham has 6 minutes 30 seconds. Magnus has 12 minutes 18 seconds. With a 30-second increment, he takes the pawn on f6. Now, very difficult to know whether to put the king on c7, d7, b7, king b5. These are some of the calculations that are toughest in chess, because there's very little separating the two moves. He blocks it with his knight. Knight d6, and Magnus chops off the rook on h8. So he gets back his material. And he has 6 pawns, while black has only 3. So it's like Parham chops off one of the pawns. So a rook and 2 pawns for 2 knights. And the queen is near the white king. Magnus pushes his pawn to d4. A great move, attacking the knight. The knight check is the best move in the position. There are no other moves that are good. He finds it with a check. King comes up to c2. And now a very important move, queen a4, creating this threat on the diagonal. Parham finds it. Beautiful. Queen a4 on the board. Magnus thinking here how to get rid of this discovered check. King b1, there'll be another check on a1 and he'll go back. And he pushes forward with d5. He's launching his own attack here, which is amazing and incredible. The best move, of course, is to go king b7 or king c7, but instead Parham puts his king on c5. And this is a bad move because now queen takes h7 is a great move for Magnus. It's a tough move because you give up a discovered check, but after king d2, let's imagine like queen h7, knight d4 check, king d2, there's no check on c2 because the queen guards it. That's why this move queen h7 may seem like, oh, he's just hungrily grabbing the pawn, but actually there's more to it. And Magnus plays queen takes h7, he presses the clock, and now the best move for Parham is to go back here, king b6. That is the best move. He finds it, king b6 on the board. What a good move. The game is getting more and more exciting here. Magnus's king is kind of trapped. He goes queen g6, he's spinning the knight here. King c7 is the best move. Keep playing and then h6, maybe knight d4 check. There will be other pieces joining in. Will be very, very exciting if Parham manages to beat Magnus here. He goes king, instead of c7, he goes king b5 and he loses on time. Oh my god. Parham Maghsoodloo has lost on time. And Magnus can't believe it. He's upset there. He's shaking his head. And he's looking at the position. But it's all over now. Parham Maghsoodloo took a bit too much time there. His position last move, king b5, was a blunder. He was already losing the game. But if he had more time, he could have figured out the nuances. And the game could have continued. But what a match. What a game this was. 29 moves just. But so much fireworks. This game was a great representation of freestyle chess. Magnus went all in from the start. Parham really responded well.